They'll never put a drug in their mouth if they saw him yesterday, what it did to him.
Andrew Woodlock had been on a life support machine for 5 days. He fell ill after taking 3 tablets of ecstasy while out with friends near his home. At his school in Lanarkshire, pupils attended a private service to pray for him. They heard the headmaster appeal to other teenagers to think how quickly the life of a normal youngster living in a quiet community could so quickly be ended by one experiment with drugs.
If this can happen to a lad like Andrew Woodlock, an ordinary youngster in a pleasant community, this can happen to anybody. He did it once, he experimented once, and now he is gone as a consequence.
Within the last week, the police have been warning people of the dangers of a new shape of ecstasy tablet being pushed in the Lanarkshire area. The government-backed Scotland Against Drugs has written to the Prime Minister urging him to withdraw funding from groups which publicise advice on how to minimise the risks of drug taking.
Harm reduction has a role, there's no doubt about that, but I think peddled in the unlimited fashion that it seems to be being used at the moment, we will have increasing numbers of cases like Andrew.
That has drawn a swift response from another agency, Crew 2000, which has accused Scotland Against Drugs of exploiting the teenager's death to have its funding cut. Andrew Castle, BBC News, Glasgow.
Women cope better with pregnancy and childbirth if they're cared for by just one midwife, according to the results of a 3-year study. It showed that those mothers needed much less pain relief and medical assistance with the birth. At the moment, some pregnant women are attended by up to 40 different people.
Feeling which way round maybe Hannah's lying.
Jacqueline Pirrie is 34 weeks pregnant, but instead of going to hospital or to her GP for a checkup, her midwife visits her at home and will be there in the labour room when she gives birth.
Measuring the uterus.
Jacqueline says having a one-to-one midwife has made this pregnancy much easier than her first.
I feel that you get more individual personal care, which is really good, and it's great to know your midwife and makes me feel a lot more relaxed, whereas when you're at the hospital it's a bit impersonal.
The home visits mean that 2-year-old Daniel can get involved. Midwives say the family-centred approach means they find their job more rewarding.
Working within the traditional system within the hospital, I felt that the care given to the women was quite fragmented, and at times it almost felt as if the women were going through labour ward on a conveyor belt, whereas now I have the opportunity to meet the women at the beginning of their pregnancy, provide their care throughout pregnancy, labour and postnatal period, and it's almost like looking after a friend. Okay, Marie, if you can just pop James down there.
A 3-year study of 1,400 women found that those cared for on a one-to-one basis by a midwife were less likely to need an epidural anaesthetic and more likely to have no pain relief at all during labour.
There we go, James.
Women who received one-to-one care were more self-confident about looking after their babies. They were more positive about the relationship, about the care that they'd received, and about the experience of pregnancy and birth.
Crucially, the one-to-one scheme does not involve any extra cost to the NHS. Several maternity units around the country have already introduced the scheme, and more seem certain to follow. Fergus Walsh, BBC News.
Charlie Cray, the elder brother of the former gangland twins Ronnie and Reggie Cray, has been found guilty of masterminding a £39 million cocaine smuggling operation. Woolwich Crown Court heard how Cray, who's 71 next month, was trapped by undercover police after he'd been caught offering to supply the drug. He'll be sentenced on Monday.
Many of Charlie Cray's friends from the East End were in court to see him convicted. It took the jury 2.5 days to find him guilty of being involved in a £39 million cocaine deal. His supporters claimed he was a victim of his infamous surname.
I think it's his name, Cray. Yes, his name, Cray. If it had been Joe Bloggs, he'd probably got bail and it probably wouldn't have even been in court now.
Cray was approached by an undercover police officer who he thought was a drugs dealer and offered to supply him with cocaine. At this hotel in Essex, his 2 co-defendants started to deliver on the deal when they handed over 2 kilos of cocaine to undercover officers. Cray claimed he never intended any drugs to change hands and was simply trying to dupe people into giving him money. Cray, seen here on the right as a pallbearer at the funeral of one of his notorious brothers, Ronnie, depicted himself in court as the poor relation of the family. He said he had to turn to Ronnie's twin Reggie for money. The jailing of the Cray twins in 1969 marked the end of one of London's most vicious criminal partnerships. Nearly 30 years later, Reggie is still imprisoned. Charlie Cray, seen here with his brothers, was convicted of being an accessory to the murder of one of their victims. At the age of 70, Charlie Cray is now facing another spell in prison. He and his two partners in this crime will be sentenced on Monday. June Kelly, BBC News at Woolwich Crown Court.
There are conflicting reports from Cambodia about the fate of the former dictator Pol Pot, who was responsible for the deaths of millions of his fellow countrymen. Radio reports say he's been captured by a faction of the Khmer Rouge, the guerrilla army he once led. But the broadcast gave no details about his fate or whereabouts, and government officials are sceptical.
A 6-year-old boy whose father was killed in a fall in the French Alps has won a High Court case against the mountain guide. Daniel Woodruff Headley, who wasn't born until after his father's death, was awarded damages which could amount to £200,000. The judge said the guide had been negligent in failing to follow standard safety procedures.
An auction of trophies and memorabilia belonging to Britain's most successful tennis player, Fred Perry, has raised nearly £300,000. The tennis racket used to win his first Wimbledon championship went for £20,000. The items were auctioned at Christie's in London, and afterwards the Perry family said they were delighted with the sale.
£20,000 for this racket. Here we are, £20,000.
Some racket. The one Fred Perry had used in 1934 to win the first of his 3 successive Wimbledon men's singles titles.
That telephone bid of £20,000.
It sold to an unnamed overseas buyer way above Christie's estimate of £1,500.
We were completely out there. It made £20,000 to a private collector. We're absolutely thrilled. It's a world record.
I mean, how can someone pay £20,000 for a tennis racket?
I think it's a Fred Perry connection, you know. If you pick up that racket, hopefully it'll bring you luck too. You could actually win Wimbledon one day, who knows?
Fred Perry's relaxed, technical brilliance dominated the game in the 1930s. And as well as Wimbledon, he won the US, French and Australian championships. The star attractions at today's sale were the Renshaw Cups, awarded to Perry for each of his 3 Wimbledon victories. They went to British collectors. Not, though, to the All England Club, which had turned down an offer from the Perry family to buy the whole collection. And many items went abroad, including the US lawn tennis trophy, won 3 times by Perry.
It's sort of a bittersweet thing to see these trophies go on sale. I think there's some feeling that trophies have to be earned, that you shouldn't be able to buy them. But I think our feeling is if they are for sale, we would then like them to be somewhere where everyone can see them.
In all, the collection sold for just short of £300,000. That's double the estimate, a measure of the importance of Fred Perry, Britain's greatest ever tennis player. Adam Minot, BBC News at Christie's in central London.
Rain washed out most of the second day of the second test between England and Australia at Lord's. But in the play that was possible this morning, Australia's bowlers reduced England to 38 for 3. Glenn McGrath took all 3 wickets, including that of England captain Mike Atherton, caught by Mark Taylor for 1. The weather intervened just before lunch and play was later abandoned for the day.
Crack of dawn starts for farmers could soon be a thing of the past with the help of robotic tractors. Trials of a driverless, computer-controlled vehicle are taking place in Bedfordshire. The new tractor can water, feed and weed a field, and its inventors are convinced it will also cut the amount of chemicals used.
An ordinary field, but no ordinary tractor. This one operates without a driver. Instead, there's a TV camera for eyes, and an onboard computer is the brain that analyses the images to keep the tractor on course. The camera's main task is to guide the tractor's spray. This test is with water, but the idea is to replace today's large-scale chemical spraying systems with something more accurate.
The benefit from the environment is that we're putting a lot less agrochemical onto the field than we would with the normal system of applying uniformly across there. And of course that also has implications for food safety. For example, we can apply herbicide just to the weeds and not to the plant, so there should be no chances of contamination.
The cauliflowers as the tractor sees them. It's accurate to within 3 centimetres and should work with almost any crop.
The vehicle sees through a television camera mounted on the front, and by making use of the computer images, it knows precisely where it is. And if, for instance, it finds itself slightly off course, it can steer back on course by changing the speed of each of the front wheels.
But it's not entirely independent. The computer has to be programmed to know which way to turn, and to help it, there's an electronic map built in of the length and breadth of the rows. It's taken 3 years to develop, and now the government's funding a project to build a robot weeder using the same technology that guides the spray. It's the very latest in high-tech farming and the first tractor of its kind, but the technology's far from perfect, and it may be many years before we see the last farmers in the field. Christy McGurty, BBC News, Bedfordshire.
The main news again tonight. The former Cabinet Minister, Jonathan Aitken, has dropped his libel action against The Guardian and Granada Television. He now faces a legal bill of nearly £2 million. The Guardian says he should be prosecuted for perjury. That's the news so far tonight. More at 9.
But from the 6 o'clock team, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening to you. Yes, another desperate day for sports lovers. We saw a band of heavy rain moving steadily northwards across the country. It is turning somewhat clearer and showery now from the south. We've got some blue sky outside the window here at the moment, but it won't take too long for the showers to gather once again. The rain band pushing up into Scotland as we go through this evening and overnight, with some heavy thundery rain still affecting northern England and across into Northern Ireland too. Just still quite bright up in the far north with 1 or 2 showers around, and down here across the south, as I say, there is some evening sunshine to enjoy. But the real reason for all this wet weather is this area of low pressure, quite a deep area of low pressure for the time of the year, now moving across southeastern parts of Ireland. So some wet weather moving further north through the night across much of northern England into Scotland and Northern Ireland, with a crop of showers following in the west and south. Temperatures tonight are about 9 or 10 degrees, but of course it's the wind that's really quite important. That low pressure is going to dominate the weather, in fact, during Saturday. It's going to mean some strong winds around the periphery, but in the centre of the low, as it drifts very slowly eastwards, the winds generally are going to be quite light. That could lead to some mist patches for a short time around dawn. But certainly some choppy seas down in the south across the Channel tomorrow, affecting the south coast of England. It really will be quite a rough day. Strong to gale force southwesterly winds, very rough seas out there. Temperatures inland about 16 or 17 degrees, that's all, with a crop of heavy showers coming in with some thunder. Further north, there will be some brightness on the eastern side of Wales, through the Midlands into East Anglia, parts of northern England during the morning, whereas further north still across Scotland and Northern Ireland, a wet start and only a slow improvement across Northern Ireland during the afternoon. At the same time, the showers in the south will become more widespread. There'll be some heavy ones, and there will be some thunderstorms virtually anywhere. And always the chance that these showers will merge to give a longer spell of wet weather coming in from the west through the Bristol Channel perhaps. Well, whichever way you look at it, it's a cool day tomorrow, and it's only about 14 to 16 degrees typically. You might just about reach 18 degrees, but of course when the heavy showers come along, it'll knock those temperatures on the head. The low pressure stays with us then during Sunday. Without being too clever about it, it means there'll be another crop of showers to come. Showers or longer spells of rain perhaps. It does look as though parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland down through the Irish Sea, that's where it may well stay pretty cloudy, with further rain at times, with the heavier showers scattered elsewhere. Temperatures again only about 16 or 17 degrees. The cool theme continues for the start of Wimbledon too, with more showers to come. Bye-bye.
If a writer draws inspiration from personal experience,
he can write a line that stops you in your tracks and makes you laugh.
Jack Rosenthal must live life in the fast lane.
He actually got the world record for the 100 yards in that field.
I'm still a bit in the dark about what writing is. Perhaps it starts with the realisation that comedy comes from pain and that the everyday is drama.
Omnibus begins a new series with a profile of one of the greatest film and TV writers of our time. Monday, 10:40, BBC One.
As the trial of the century continues.
Your Honour, this is not fair. I am a comic, not Mystic Meg.
The ambition of every reliant Robin owner is to get a speeding ticket. Every time you see one, there's an enormous tailback of pedestrians.
We ask, have you seen these men?
It's the three tenants.
Sun God was greeted by 3 high priests in their sacred vestments and 1 in a duvet cover. Sorry. Is this sick taken?
They're masters of disguise, but you can help us find them. Thursday nights from 9:30 on BBC One.
Well, gags are plenty, and whatever next with the piano, the best of Les Dawson in 30 minutes.
Now on BBC One, Look North with Mike McCarthy and Claire Frisbee.